Hello, welcome back to the Breaking News Update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got a breaking news report coming out regarding Russia, and we're also going to talk about NATO in this video as well. And I have a huge report today that just broke on the Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal is a mainstream news publication reporting today what you see here on your screen. Russia is expanding military bases near Finland, preparing for war with NATO. Russia is expanding military bases near its border with Finland and preparing to move additional troops closer to Europe, signaling potential preparations for a future confrontation with NATO. Okay, so now quickly, we've been hearing recently a lot over the last year that NATO officials all across Europe have been warning that Russia is preparing to launch an offensive and attack NATO sometime by maybe 2028, 2029, or even by the end of the decade in 2030. We've been hearing so much of that, and I've been reporting that to you guys for probably at least the last 6 to 8 months, repeatedly, at least once a month. Okay, so now these reports coming out here and pictures like this coming out also showing expansion of military bases inside of Western Russia, okay, close to the border of Finland, which is a NATO member. So, is this possibly a sign that Russia is preparing to launch an offensive and attack NATO at some point here in the near future? Is this war going to end with Ukraine soon? And then will a new front open up where Russia will now attack a NATO member, such as maybe the Baltic nations, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, or maybe even Finland? Okay, we're going to talk about that today. We're actually going to jump on over to a mainstream news article, and let me show you the information over here. Then we'll also jump onto X, and I have a few things I can share with you guys over there as well. So from the Kiev Independent, Russia's military building up at Finland's border over a potential NATO clash, Wall Street Journal reports. You can see the dates here, April 28th, 2025. And it says right here, Russia is expanding its military infrastructure near the border with Finland in what experts, and officials say could be a preparation for a potential clash with NATO, the Wall Street Journal reported on April 28th. These efforts include expanding military bases near the Russian city of Zavodsk, if I'm saying that right, around 160 kilometers or 100 miles east of Finland. The planned site for a new headquarters that could potentially command tens of thousands of troops, the outlet wrote. Western military and intelligence officials are reportedly warning that these units could form the backbone of Russia's forces preparing to confront NATO. Since the start of Russia's all-out war against Ukraine, NATO officials have increasingly warned Moscow could launch aggression against the alliance members in the coming years. Finland, which shares a 1,300-kilometer or 800-mile border with Russia, has accused Moscow of ramping up hybrid operations against the Nordic country since it joined NATO in 2023. Russia's military is currently heavily engaged in Ukraine, suffering massive losses in manpower and equipment. This has forced Moscow to redeploy forces from other areas over the past years, with a media investigation saying last June that most of the Russian ground units previously stationed near Finland were dispatched to Ukraine. Okay, I'm actually going to show you guys that report. I remember covering that last June. I'll show you a post talking about that on X here in a minute. Christopher Gavoli, commander of U.S. forces in Europe, nevertheless warned earlier this month that Russia is rebuilding its forces much faster than previously anticipated. Despite extensive battlefield losses in Ukraine, the Russian military is reconstituting and growing at a faster rate than most analysts had anticipated, Gavoli told a U.S. Senate committee. According to the general, the U.S. expects Russia to produce 250,000 artillery shells per month, which could help it build a stockpile 3 times larger than the U.S. and Europe combined. Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov said last December that Russia must be ready for a potential conflict with NATO in the next 10 years. Moscow has also issued a number of veiled and overt threats to the West over its support for Kiev, including warnings of possible nuclear response. Finally, it says here NATO countries in Russia's vicinity have intensified their preparations for a possible conflict. Poland and the Baltic countries have moved to abandon a treaty banning landmines and are strengthening the borders shared with Russia and its ally Belarus while urging higher defense spending across the alliance. Okay, so that's already a huge sign right there. We know that NATO members in the Baltic, especially, like I said, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, even Poland, have all withdrawn from the Ottawa Treaty banning anti-personnel landmines, so that way they can start placing them along their border. We know countries like Lithuania, for example, have been loading up their border with dragon's teeth as well. So, I mean, NATO is definitely preparing for a conflict with Russia in the future, and we can see Russia doing the same thing on their end with all the moves they've been making lately. So now we're going to hop on over to X. Let me show you guys a few things over here from independent sources. Military News UA reports Russia expands military bases on Finnish border, which could mean preparations for war with NATO, says Wall Street Journal. We were talking about military bases in Petrozavodsk, if I'm saying that right. That one's a hard name to pronounce, and other areas near the border with Finland, as well as the restoration and construction of a new railway in areas near Estonia, Finland, and Norway. In addition, it is reported that the Leningrad military district will be the place where most of the military personnel will be transferred to join the ranks of the Russian armed forces as part of the increase in the size of the Russian army to 1.5 million people. So that's a big sign right there, also. Okay, if Russia's expecting this war to come to an end, why are they continuously increasing the size of their army? Okay, and going up all the way to 1.5 million. I think last time we had an update, Russia was somewhere around 1.2 or 1.3 million. They're now going to increase that up to 1.5. Okay, so here's a little picture that came out to kind of show the area that we're talking about here. So it might be a little small on your screen, but we've got Finland right here, here's Sweden, and then here's part of Norway up here in the top right corner of where Norway would be located. So this is all borders of Russia here, and this kind of red line here is indicating the area that we're talking about where Russia's building these railway lines. They're increasing military bases close to over here. Here's Petrozavodsk, if I'm saying that right. There's that other town about 100 miles from the Finland border. And many military bases are located up here in this area. And we've talked about this before. Like I said last year, that report that was talking about it over here on the Kiev Post, they were stating, or the Kiev Independent, excuse me, they were stating that last year in June that Russia had moved a lot of forces from up here near Finland down to Ukraine. Well, it looks like they now could be preparing to move them back over there if we see this war come to an end. So that's kind of what this map here is showing, just kind of the area of all these bases where they're located at right next to the Finnish border. So now look at this from Jurgen Nonnet. Russia expands military bases on the border with Finland, which could signal preparations for war with NATO, says Wall Street Journal. These include military bases in Petrozavodsk and other areas near the border with Finland, as well as restoration and construction of a new railway line in areas near Estonia, Finland, Norway. Furthermore, it is reported that the majority of the military personnel being recruited into the ranks of the Russian armed forces as part of the expansion of the Russian army to 1.5 million troops will be transferred to the Leningrad military district. Meanwhile, Europe is sleeping, is what Jurgen Nonet's saying. So we heard that information already. Just wanted to quickly go over that. But these are satellite images that are being shared online as well, showing Russia expanding these military bases. So you can see here they got two long structures or barracks here, some sort of buildings. Now they've got three more that they've built. Okay, so they are expanding these bases up here. And again, why would Russia be doing this if they weren't preparing for some sort of escalation to happen in that area? Now, obviously, we are hearing that Russia is going to be upping the size of their military, so maybe they're just expanding these bases in regards to that, but possibly could be due to potential conflict in the future. Here's another picture as well. Okay, so satellite images in 2022 and 2025. So we can see this base here before and then after. Look at all these look like maybe military vehicles or some sort of bunkers that have been constructed over here. And right here, if you look before, there was nothing here. And now all of a sudden, they've expanded it all the way out here, building lots more potential storage areas or whatever might be used for the Russian military. So definitely they are preparing for something if Russia is building up their military bases and expanding them over here close to Finland. Finally, I want to show you guys this from Max 24. Russian bases near the border of Finland are now empty, according to YLE. Russia committed 80% of its personnel and equipment to the war against Ukraine, despite Moscow's threats due to Finland's accession to NATO. Okay, so if you notice the date here, June 19th, 2024, okay, so middle of last year, we had these reports of these same bases that we're talking about here that were being essentially emptied out. Okay, so Russia was moving a lot of their forces away from these bases and moving them on down to Ukraine, okay, because obviously that's where all the fighting was ongoing. Russia was obviously very focused on fighting Ukraine at the time, but now that we're starting to hear a lot of these talks of, Russia's pretty much slowing things down now, or at least we may see this war come to an end. Now Russia's probably going to start deploying these forces back up over here near Finland again. And who is going to be the next conflict? Is it going to be NATO with some of the Baltic nations and Finland being on the front line over here, or what's going to happen? We know Poland could possibly be one of those as well. And then also this summer, we have that major military exercise going to be taking place between Belarus and Russia as well. And we're hearing maybe upwards of 100,000 troops combined or more. So I'm sure that's a major concern for NATO as well. But this was that report last year where we were hearing all these bases were being emptied out. Now we're hearing the opposite. Now all these Russian bases are going to actually expand, and we could potentially have a higher amount of military personnel located at these bases. Okay, so definitely something to stay in touch with here and kind of monitor this situation, see what happens if Russia starts to move a lot of these troops back over here to the border of Finland, as we've been hearing so many reports recently over the last year that NATO is preparing for some sort of conflict to break out with Russia in the near future. Okay, so just wanted to give you guys some details on this situation, but let me know what you think about this down in the comment section. That's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you with that. Hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.